Billions for roads and bridges and more. Ahead on Face the State. Voter turnout may have been low on Election Day, but support was high for Issue 2. Now, $2.5 billion will flow into local municipalities across the state for infrastructure projects. What the State Capital Improvement Program means for communities and how it works. Also, President Trump's trade deal with the United Kingdom, a push for more tariffs on imported steel, and the Federal Reserve holds interest rates steady. Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno weighs in on these issues impacting America's and Ohio's economies. Plus, millions of Americans are buried under medical debt. A new bill in the legislature aims to give Ohioans in the same boat a little breathing room. We'll look at the goal of the Ohio Medical Debt Fairness Act. Face the State starts now. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. $2.5 billion for infrastructure. Voters gave it a resounding thumbs up on Tuesday. Issue 2 passed with 68% of the vote. This means the State Capital Improvement Program is renewed for another 10 years. But what does this all mean for you? Well, here's what it will do. The state will have the authority to issue $250 million worth of bonds per year for 10 years. This is all for local municipalities across the state. The capital improvement projects can only be for roads and bridges, wastewater treatment systems, water supply systems, solid waste disposal facilities, and stormwater and sanitary treatment facilities. State leaders tell me this will not raise taxes. The program was created in 1987. It was renewed in 1995, 2005, and 2014. So voters have now renewed it for the fourth time. Municipalities apply for low-interest loans and grants through the State Capital Improvement Program. Since the program was created in 1987, supporters say it has provided funding for more than 19,000 infrastructure projects in all 88 counties. They also say it generates 35,000 construction jobs. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say this will help make sure both sides of the road are in good shape.
It's the fourth time we've reauthorized it. It is very important for our local communities, for important infrastructure projects, so I was glad to see the voters support it.
And the people who are administering this, county engineers and county commissioners, sit down and say, okay, here's our share of this, what do we really need to do?
The State Capital Improvement Program will now continue from 2027 through 2036. Democratic State Senator Herschel Craig co-sponsored the bipartisan legislation to put this issue on the ballot with Republican Senator Brian Chavez of Marietta. Craig emphasized the passage of this measure does not cost Ohioans more.
This does not, and we said that clearly, does not raise your taxes, but it is fundamental to the infrastructure and what it will do for roads, bridges, waterways, all of that.
Joining me now to talk about the impacts of Issue 2 and how the State Capital Improvement Program works is Franklin County Chief Deputy of Engineering, Fritz Crozier. Fritz, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Doug.
So what is the feeling amongst the engineering community right now that, that this has passed and the project will continue?
Excitement. We're very excited to see this funding continue for the next 10 years. Franklin County Engineers Office, like so many different agencies around the state of Ohio, have a limited funding budget. So Issue 2 will help us bridge that funding gap. It will help us deliver critically important infrastructure improvement projects to the residents that use these roadways and bridges every single day.
I was going to ask that, how important is this to the local municipalities?
Very important. As I said, with the limited funding that we do have, we're always very aggressive in seeking federal and state grants. We utilize these grants to leverage other grants, so it's critical to have access to these funds so that we can continue building our important projects.
So what kinds of projects does it fund? You have some that are actually in the works right now.
Absolutely. Roadways, bridges, drainage improvement projects, water supply chain facilities, wastewater treatment facilities. Some of the important projects that the Franklin County Engineers Office has received some of this funding for in the past include a multitude of roundabouts throughout Franklin County. A couple of examples of those are the Norton Road at Grove City Crop Road intersection in southwest Franklin County, Morse Road at Babbitt Road roundabout in northeast Franklin County, bridges, Hayden Run Road over the Scioto River was built a couple of years back utilizing these funds, and currently We have a couple of ongoing projects that are under construction. Those include the Trayview Road over the Scioto River project.
That's funded through this project.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right there just west of Upper Arlington. That's a bridge project, and we also have a roadway project ongoing in the Hilliard area. That's the Renner Road improvement project from Alton and Darby Creek Road to Spindler Road.
I know the Trayview project has been underway for quite a while, almost from the top of the hill all the way down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a multi-year project that began construction in late part of 2024, and we're hoping to wrap that up early next year.
So what do you think would have happened had this measure not passed?
Unfortunately, many of the jurisdictions throughout the state would have been faced with some challenging decisions. We would have had to reevaluate our capital improvement programs, and unfortunately, we would have been faced with decisions such as which projects can we advance, which projects might need to be delayed, and unfortunately, we probably would have had to cancel some of our future projects.
Do you know typically, it's $250 million a year. Do you know how much Franklin County averages in yearly money that comes in for these projects?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that this is it's an annual program. It's competitive. The Franklin County Engineers Office has been successful on nearly 24 projects over the last 5 years. But because it's competitive, some years we'll be successful on 1 or 2 projects. Some years we'll be successful on maybe a few more. We also submit applications on behalf of the townships throughout Franklin County. So any given year we might, as I mentioned, we might be successful on 2 projects, or we may be successful on 6 or 8
Does
projects.
that depend on the size of the project and the cost?
These projects are scored and ranked based off of a multitude of factors that include the existing condition of the roadway. They take a look at safety and health, economic development potential, and also the projects and the scoring for these applications typically take a close look at project partnerships. Are we working closely with other agencies and other private partners?
How does it work then? So who makes the decision on who gets the grant or the low interest loan? How does that process work?
So it's a very well-run process from our experience. Again, it's an annual grant program. The Ohio Public Works Commission is responsible for administering the State Capital Improvement Program. As mentioned, this is a program that provides financial assistance for infrastructure, and it has grant components and 0% interest loan components. The fund is paid for by bonds issued by the state of Ohio, which require the voter approval, most recently here on the May 6th ballot. We submit projects and applications every single year to our districts. There's 19 districts throughout the state of Ohio. Franklin County's district is District 3. And for those components of the applications that I mentioned previously, they'll take a look at all of those factors that I had mentioned, and they'll score them against other agencies in each individual district and rank them appropriately.
Yeah, I mentioned that this project, this program has been around since 1987. This is now the 4th time voters have renewed it. How much impact has this had over those 40 years across the state? And I understand it's all 88 counties.
Right. I think the statistics, they speak for themselves. I believe the number is something like 19,000 projects over those 40 years. In just the last 5 years alone, our office has received over $16 million. That's absolutely essential in order for us to continue delivering the projects that are on our capital improvement program.
The current round of bonds is still in effect. So we report that this goes 2027 to 2036. There's no gap here. This current round of funding is still going on. So you mentioned some of those projects that are going on. So is that application process still going on for the current round of funding?
Yes, absolutely. So what we love about this funding program is it's quick to deliver the projects. Typically, if you receive a successful grant application, you're seeing that project go to construction in 6 months, maybe upwards of 18 months. But every year there's an annual application process. We're actually beginning the conversations at our office currently for this fall's application cycle. And typically the announcements are made by the Public Works Integrating Committee by the end of the year.
So it's a constant process.
Absolutely.
Then. And what are your hopes for that next 10 years?
We're very aggressive in trying to reach every corner of the county. Franklin County Engineers Office is intent on serving every single resident every single day. And we have a very aggressive program. I think we've got over 80 projects on our capital program, and there's absolutely no way we'd be able to deliver that program without funding like a state capital improvement program.
Yeah.
We're just eager. We're excited to see that the voters of Ohio responded with a resounding yes this week, and we're very, very excited to deliver these projects for the residents we serve.
Yeah, Columbus gets a lot of attention, of course, but you're trying to hit every municipality in the county.
Absolutely.
All right. Fritz Crozier with the Franklin County Engineering Department. Thank you so much for your perspective on how this all works, like, on the ground level. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Well, still ahead on Face the State, Senator Bernie Moreno on America's new trade deal with the UK, the Federal Reserve's decision to hold interest rates steady, and his own move to add tariffs on imported steel appliances. Also, an effort to ease the staggering burden of medical debt. Lawmakers are proposing the Ohio Medical Debt Fairness Act, how it could help families struggling to get out from under a mountain of bills. Plus, protecting Ohio's kids by getting them to put a lid on it. The major effort to get thousands of bike helmets on kids' heads across the state. On Thursday, President Trump announced a trade agreement with the United Kingdom. He said the deal would include billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, specifically agricultural products. Trump said the U.S.'s 10% tariff on U.K. goods will stand. U.K. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the deal will boost trade between the two countries. Britain says the deal will cut tariffs on U.K. cars heading to the U.S. from 27.5% to 10% and eliminate tariffs on steel and aluminum. They add the agreement sets a quota of 100,000 U.K. vehicles that can be imported to the U.S. at that 10% tariff. I asked Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno if he believes it's a good deal for the U.S.
It's a phenomenal deal for the U.S. It massively expands agricultural products going into the U.K., massively expands natural gas going into the UK from America. Two things that we do a lot of really well in Ohio. We have thousands of years of natural gas. We do really well in agriculture and beef. Wayne County is the headquarters of amazing and very, very good high quality beef. It rewards the UK for coming to the table early, and it reduces the tariff on automobiles from 25% to 10%, which is making those auto companies very, very happy. So it's a phenomenal deal. It is the absolute epitome of the art of the deal, Doug. And I'm hoping that other countries follow suit very quickly.
On that same day, Moreno urged U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to expand tariffs on steel derivatives to cover the cost of imported appliances that are made with steel. He says that would help American appliance makers and workers, such as Whirlpool in Ohio.
So think about this. At one point, not that long ago, all appliances in the world were made in America, for the most part. All of them. We had General Electric, Westinghouse, Maytag, Whirlpool. We were the absolute kings of the hill on making appliances. We have one company left, Whirlpool. Where do they make their appliances? In Ohio. They employ thousands of people in 5 different manufacturing facilities, key facilities for these communities. And they have to compete with slave labor in China, Chinese steel that is massively subsidized. So what I've asked the president to do is when those appliances come in, that the entire appliance, which is mostly steel, by the way, get tariffed at the 232, which is the emergency tariff rate of 25%, to allow Whirlpool to compete.
Also this week, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announced the Fed is holding interest rates steady. Powell said the decision was based on economic data showing the U.S. is relatively in good shape. He also said the Fed wanted to wait until the effects of President Trump's tariffs on inflation, the effects of those on inflation and economic growth are clearer. That prompted Trump to call Powell a fool for acting too late to cut rates. I asked Senator Moreno about the Fed's decision to hold interest rates steady.
I think that's a wrong-headed decision. Look, at the end of the day, there's certainly room to lower interest rates. You've seen other central banks around the world do the same thing. Very disappointed with Chairman Powell. He committed to me in our conference meeting in the banking committee that he would stay apolitical. During the Biden administration, he stayed silent as fiscal stimulus went out of control, which led to generationally high inflation. He knew that was bad policy, but he's weighed in and given a personal opinion on tariffs, which, by the way, is incorrect. And I'm looking forward to next year when his term is up and President Trump puts somebody in there who actually knows how to steer the Federal Reserve in the right direction.
In a news conference about the decision to hold rates steady, Chairman Powell highlighted concerns that President Trump's tariffs could spur higher inflation and unemployment. He added they are waiting to see hard economic data on the impact of the tariffs before making a move on interest rates. Ohio U.S. Senator John Husted joined an effort to repeal the federal estate tax, commonly known as the death tax on family farms and small businesses. Husted says that tax can cripple family-run farms because it forces them to pay a tax for transferring property and other assets when a family member dies. In a statement, Husted said, Ohio's family small business owners and farmers spend a lifetime feeding and fueling our nation, and they often hope to pass down their businesses to the next generation. I'm supporting this bill to give hardworking families and farmers relief from the costly tax burden that makes it hard or even impossible for them to provide for our communities for generations. Senator Husted also threw his support behind a bill to safeguard the Hyde Amendment, which prevents federal tax dollars from funding abortions. The bill would make the Hyde Amendment permanent. Right now, Congress has to vote on the Hyde Amendment every year. In a statement, Husted said, I'm supporting this bill to make sure American taxpayers with sincere moral and religious pro-life beliefs are never forced to fund abortion. I'll continue to back solutions to support mothers and families and protect unborn children, end quote. The amendment was already the law of the land under the Biden administration. Now a look at how state leaders are trying to help Ohioans protect their money. At its peak in 2021, Ohioans were grappling with at least $220 billion owed on medical bills, and lawmakers say that number is only rising. New legislation is now on the table in Ohio. The goal is to ease that staggering burden of medical debt. 10 TV's Bryn Caswell explains the newly proposed Ohio Medical Debt Fairness Act and what it could mean for families trying to stay afloat.
No one ever plans on getting sick. And because of that, lawmakers say this new legislation will create permanent protection for Ohioans at their most vulnerable.
But in 2010, cancer diagnosis was nowhere in our medical budget.
Sleepless nights, counting bills made Rachel Doan's life a living nightmare while her son Luke battled cancer.
There was always that black cloud of, what if I don't make payments, what happens?
Her medical debt crippling. Even 15 years later.
There are still some things on my credit report. There are still a few providers that I am paying.
Doan isn't alone. 7 in 10 Ohioans have or know someone with medical debt. This is why lawmakers introduced the Ohio Medical Debt Fairness Act. The bill proposes capping medical debt interest rates at 3% annually, blocking providers from reporting to credit agencies, and banning wage garnishment tied to medical bills.
This provision protects working people and ensures that illness doesn't spiral into poverty.
Lawmakers making it clear this bill does not eliminate medical debt.
You will have to still pay for it, but it provides those necessary guardrails so it doesn't ruin your credit.
Luke, now a survivor, requires ongoing care. Doan says she fears the debt will someday fall on him.
We know things can come up as well as emergencies, and I don't want him to avoid any type of medical care because he's concerned about his own medical debt.
The bill will now go to a committee for further review, and it could take weeks until it's signed into law. Bryn Caswell, 10 TV News.
Utility prices also continue to go up, and if you're submetered, there's not much you can do about it. Submetering is when you pay your utility bill to a third-party company. It could mean you're missing out on consumer protections and money-saving programs. Now, lawmakers want to give the power back to the residents trapped in this unregulated industry. 10 TV's Carla Rogner shows you how a new bill in the State House could protect your energy bills.
Legislators say Central Ohio is a hotspot for submetering, but these companies operate in what they called a legal gray area. This legislation looks to close that gap.
They're a third party. You have to go through other avenues in order, so there's nothing we can do.
David Denegri has done his research about submetering companies after realizing he paid his electric bills to one a few years back.
When I got the first bill, because I was expecting to get AEP. And it wasn't, it was APL. It sounds similar, doesn't it? AEP, APL? I thought it did.
When Denegri received a bill he thought was too high, he realized his options for resolving the issue were limited because he was submetered.
We were actually being treated as second-class citizens, right? Because we're not given the same due process.
Submetering companies are not bound by any of these same obligations. even though the service they provide is identical from the customer's point of view.
Representatives Sean Brennan and Tex Fisher want submetering companies to be regulated the same way public utilities are. Their bill would require submetering customers have protections that they're not promised now, including due process for disconnecting utilities, access to low-income energy programs, a process to dispute bills in front of the PUCO, and the ability to switch energy providers.
There is an entire class of people who are locked out of that competitive retail electric market, and those are customers who are submetered.
Ohio Consumers Council President Maureen Willis has been fighting for regulation for years.
Fought it at the PUCO, fought it at the courts, and now we're at the legislative level.
And why should people who are submetered care about this bill?
Well, they should care about this bill because they're now unprotected, and they're getting charged for a service that is not the same service as the utilities provide.
She says for customers like Denegri, this legislation is long overdue.
Consumer beware.
Next, these legislators plan to meet with other utility companies to try and get them on board this bill. Reporting at the State House, Carla Rogner, 10 TV News.
Thank you, Carla. Right now, a bill is working through the Ohio State House aiming to crack down on drivers who illegally pass a school bus. But some people are raising concerns about the enforcement of the bill. The School Bus Safety Act calls for cameras to be put on school buses to catch drivers in the act. But the Ohio Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers worries the cameras will catch the vehicle and not the actual driver.
I think that that's a little of a misguided approach to targeting the actual wrongdoer. At the end of the day, not every violation of law is prosecutable, is provable.
And right now, that bill is still in a Senate committee. ODOT is working with the American Academy of Pediatrics Ohio chapter to keep your kids safe. They're urging parents and kids to put a lid on it. A bicycle helmet, that is. ODOT gave 13,000 free bike helmets to 179 Ohio organizations last week. Those organizations will now distribute the safety headgear to kids who need them. Experts say it's estimated only 20% of Ohio children wear a helmet while riding a bike, even though we know they can save lives.
I would say the helmets prevent many injuries every year. And so if you can take that one small step to make sure that you're safe while you're out playing, it can really make a big difference in safety if you have some sort of accident.
Experts say wearing a helmet can reduce your risk of head injury by 85% and severe brain injury by 88%. That is according to the Ohio chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Sometimes politics and sports collide. Coming up next on Face the State, why the Ohio State Buckeyes blitzed the Ohio Senate. Well, actually, they were invited to receive a special honor. Hear from head coach Ryan Day on what it means. First, they went to the White House, then they went to the State House. Another big honor for the national champion Ohio State football team last week. The state Senate honored the team with a resolution recognizing them for winning the college football national championship over Notre Dame in January. Then head coach Ryan Day got a chance to speak.
Just standing here today makes, us all realize the responsibility we have at Ohio State, because we understand Ohio State football brings everybody together in Ohio, and that certainly means something to us. So again, thank you for this honor, for honoring our team today. We're humbled and grateful, and we are proud to bring this championship back to a home and to a state that's relentless and resilient. Go Bucks.
Coach Day was joined by 4 Buckeye players for the recognition ceremony. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you back here next Sunday at 11:30.